joined Apple, it was a successful startup back then. But HP was a already established player in that point of time, right?
Oh, yeah. HP started in 1938,
Yeah.
grew 20% a year every year up until 1998.
Mm-hmm.
So HP was a very strong going concern. One of their management philosophies is to keep each product line and division to less than 500 people so they could stay as close to the customer as possible. And they were spinning off divisions all the time. HP didn't run into trouble until a finance guy who was a division manager, I think Corvallis, Oregon, encouraged the board to hire a lady by the name of Carly Fiorina, whose best claim to fame is she was a salesperson from the old AT&T. So she knew nothing of technology. She knew nothing of product development. And she just did not ascribe to Apple values. She believed in the Ayn Rand's make a profit at all costs and everything else will take care of you, which HP and its values was opposed to. HP believed in social contributions, that society gave them the right to exist. She did not. And as a result, she blew up the Apple values, wanted to acquire Compaq, had a huge falling out with Dave Packard's son, who resigned then from the board, ran a full-page editorial in the Wall Street Journal attacking her and her business approach. And HP has been slowly spiraling into oblivion ever since. They spun off the instrumentation group, called it Agilent. That was the original HP, was instrumentation. And then they spun off the PC and printer group and formed HP Enterprise, which focuses primarily on large organizations and on consulting services.
Yep. HP and IBM also one of the established player back then. So HP and IBM had all the money of the world. Still, they lost the game, the computer race, to Apple and Microsoft. What went wrong for them? What do you think?
In the case of IBM, their notion of doing a personal computer was opposed strongly by the senior salespeople at IBM. They were afraid that the PC would cannibalize sales of the big IBM mainframes, and as a result, threatened the very large commission checks that the sales force was getting. So they actively campaigned behind the scenes to cancel any attempt at a personal computer. IBM also struggled getting into workstations, which was in between mainframes, mini computers. Then there was workstations, and then there was personal computers. And they also struggled to get into the mini computer market. Similar to that, one of their neighbors, a company called Xerox, and the joke around here is Xerox never does anything original. They
did the GUI. They did the GUI, right? Apple and Microsoft inspired by it.
Yep. Xerox wanted to get into the computer business, and they also invented digital photography. No, it was Kodak I'm talking about. The senior salespeople at Kodak said, no, we can't get into digital photography because it would cannibalize our film business, our still film and our motion film. And today, as a result of not exploiting digital photography, Kodak is just a shell of its original self. Back in the 80s, it was one of the biggest companies in the world, employed most employees in upstate New York. And in fact, about 10 years ago, I was hired by Sobek, or Sabek, the plastics company of the Saudi Arabian oil industry. They had purchased GE Advanced Plastics and then added to it the feedstocks from Saudi Arabia's petroleum. And they had a conference in York, in Rochester, New York, the capital of New York State. And they asked me to come out and teach a 2-3 day seminar on digital transformation, how they could transform the company from the way they used to do things into a digital world. And I told that story about Kodak, and there were several former Kodak salespeople and managers in the room that were now working for Sabek. And they told me later that my story is exactly correct. So what went wrong is those companies did not spin off those types of businesses as separate divisions with full authority and full responsibility, like HP did, which enabled HP, like I mentioned earlier, one of the things that enabled them to grow 20% per year in sales every year from 1938 to 1998.
This is remind me is for something like Nokia. Once upon a time, it's a big phone manufacturing company, but now it's nowhere to be seen.
Yeah, Nokia had two major product lines. One was telecommunications equipment, And I think they're still going good in that area. That's a business to business type of
Yeah,
play.
B2B. Yeah.
The other is cell phones. And for some reason, they didn't recognize the threat of the iPhone, a smartphone,
Yeah.
and they never seemed to develop a phone that had some computing power in it. Steve positioned the iPhone as the internet in your pocket. Nokia ignored it. BlackBerry, which was the other major competitor at the time, had a huge market share in the corporate market, believed that the way you distinguished their phone from the iPhone is that the BlackBerry had a mechanical keyboard while the iPhone had a touch screen keyboard, and they thought the touch screen would never go anywhere.
Yeah.
So in both cases, a limited vision, understanding what it is that the customer wants to do, hampered them in developing their own follow-on products and services.
They just relied on the speech by the Steve Ballmer soon after iPhone launched. He made a fun out of an iPhone, so Nokia took his feedback seriously. So they didn't care that much of how revolutionary iPhone back then.
Steve, let me ask you about the iPhone and the Zune, if I may. The Zune was getting some traction, then Steve Jobs goes to Macworld and he pulls out this iPhone. What was your first reaction when you saw that?
$500 fully subsidized with a plan? I said, that is the most expensive phone in the world, and it doesn't appeal to business customers because it doesn't have a keyboard, which makes it not a very good email machine. Now, it may sell very well or not. We have our strategy. We've got great Windows mobile devices in the market today. You can get a Motorola Q phone now for $99. It's a very capable machine. It'll do music. It'll do internet. It'll do email. It'll do instant messaging. So I kind of look at that and I say, well, I like our strategy. I like it a lot.
So the result is they are completely out of the race.
Yeah, Microsoft back then had an operating system for a phone. One of the weaknesses of Microsoft back then is they had little empathy for the customer, and as a result, they had little user experience. I mean, take a look at Windows itself. In those days, you had to click on Start in order to stop the computer, and you're trying to do a major project and you boot up Excel, and you get a message from Microsoft, we have to update your Excel. And this will take 25 minutes, which means you're going to be late on your project for your boss and you'll probably get fired. They decided themselves when your computer and your applications get updated rather than saying, hey, is it now a convenient time to update it or would you like to do it later, like Apple did with the operating system? That's why I said, sometimes you epitomize the brand that you put out. Brand of a product or a service or a company is the promise of the product or the promise of the company. And sometimes you summarize that in a tagline, which boils down the promise of your company. So I always thought the tagline for Microsoft should be helping more people feel more stupid than any other company in the world.
Thanks for watching. To see the full episode, check out the link in the description.